Mrs. Sadika Peerboy is also a well-known personality whose witty columns and short stories have regaled us many a time. I remember enjoying her column in Sunday Herald week after week. I would really look forward to it, much before I got to meet and know her personally. Sadika is an advertising professional who has worked at Ma Mumbai. She is a literary graduate from Elphinstone College, Mumbai, and she's done an MA in journalism and a postgraduate course in creative writing from the New School, New York. Sadika started freelancing to maintain her sanity in a high-stress job and has since written and published several hundred short stories in leading magazines and Sunday papers. She has scripted 2 popular serials for national television, Honi Unhoni and Sara Jahan Hamara, and has penned documentary scripts for BBC World too. 2 of her short story collections have been published. Actually there are 4 books that have been published. Her 3rd book, But Other Mothers Do, is a hilarious take on the trials and tribulations of a young working mother. And her 4th book, Merry Go Round, became a bestseller and was performed at the Deccan Herald Theatre Fest also. This is also a hilarious take on arranged marriages. She runs a British affiliated college in India, the Wigan and Lee College, for specialized studies in advertising, marketing and graphic design. Visiting lectureship at IIM Bangalore, Chitrakala Parishad and other colleges, managing directorship of Energy Skills, a training and placement company, and creativity workshops for corporates are some of her other pursuits. And of course, Hindustani music. Clearly a woman wearing many hats. May I present Mrs. Sadika Peerboy.
Many hats give you a headache which lasts forever. Anyway, I'd like Arundhati, I also wondered what was I going to talk to so many empowered women here, or already empowered as far as I can see. So, and not that I know very much about the digital age either, because when I was working and I was doing 100 different things during the day, there was not even a cell phone to help me. You know, so when I would get a frantic call on the landline saying, "Mom, come home immediately, Akshar's cut his foot," or something like that, I couldn't even FaceTime with them. I couldn't call back, and it was just get into a car and dash back on the edge of panic and things like that. So one did one's best when one could. But and now I think with so many apps at your command and cell phones and FaceTime and what have you, everything possible, you can do twice as much as possibly I did. So that is, you know, a great big encouragement for you to outdo anything that my generation may have done in our time. I would like to start with a few myths that hold us women back. Yesterday I went for a book launch called Mythmaker, which was written on Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw by somebody called Seema Singh. So that gave me an idea, and I said, look, there's so many myths which hold us back, which keep us back from giving our best. So let me bust the myths as we go along. And the first one says, women are delicate, weak creatures. Now, I can see everybody laughing that. Ask any man if he's willing to go out and give birth to a baby. Okay, not even one. Have a baby and then go back and have another one and another one. Now that takes not weakness. And certainly not weakness, it takes a rare kind of strength and mental strength to go out and face that kind of torture. And if you know, if any of your husbands has had the mild case of flu at home, you know the ruckus they create. And so you tell me who's the weaker, which is the weaker sex. And it all started with some guy called Manu who seemed to think that women were weak and ineffective or whatever. He must have been really bullied in his personal life by his wife or whatever. Okay. Manu also says that women are less intelligent and less capable. Can you imagine that? And look at us multitasking. Even if we don't work, the kind of multitasking we put into running a home, running a family, is something awesome, which, you know, when you step back a little and think about it, you realize that there's so many kinds of skills that come into play into running a home. And which, if men go to office, come back, and if you tell them, okay, on your way home, can you pick up this? He said, stop giving me so many chores to do. You know, and here we're doing some 30 different chores at the same time. I must tell you another case when I first got my cell phone, you know, when the cell phones were first launched. I was so thrilled with my cell phone. I used to tell my secretary, now look, only if very important calls come, you must put it through. Don't give my number to anybody. And only if, you know, certain very big clients call up, only then you can give my number. Don't give it to all and sundry. As a result, no calls came through. What calls came through was my husband saying, have you picked up that bottle of wine from Brigade Road? What about my shirt from the laundry? Have you picked that up? Finally, I went and dumped that phone in my freezer and I said, okay, I don't want a cell phone with me if that is all the calls I'm going to get through. And for a long time, you'll find the powers that be have tried to curb women in various ways simply because they were afraid of the intellectual capability of a woman. I'm sorry, gentlemen, if I'm hurting your sensitivities, but okay, I'm sure you agree deep down in your hearts. Yes. So, a lot of effort went into curbing women. For instance, in Islam, they brought in the parda system. You know why? Because the men would be tempted by a face. So now, which is the weaker sex? If one fair face is going to tempt you to get off the rails and go and do something weird, who's the weaker sex? And for years and years, the Brahmins wouldn't teach the mantras to women. Gayatri mantra wouldn't come near a woman. Why? Because they were afraid of the power they would unleash. That's a fact, that's true. It's only of late that, you know, women are coming out and so many, now there's a lot of agitation with women wanting to go into sanctum sanctorums. Why not? How do they defile it? Okay, so that's myth 2. So which I'm sure all of you have already destroyed in your mind. Third one says women don't understand business. Okay. Now anybody who's haggled over the price of tomatoes or the price of onions or manage a temperamental cook or manage a staff of 3 people who are all at loggerheads with each other and they're fighting and some of them are romancing with each other or eloping. The cook is eloping with the maid is in love with the driver. And if you haven't managed, you know, you tell me one woman who hasn't managed these kinds of complications at home. Or managed 2 children at each other's necks, at each other's throats. Or managed a husband coming home with complaints. So that takes management skills of a very high order, if you ask me. Even without stepping out of the home, you have already got so many, you know, inherent management skills as a woman. Okay, then this is really needs to be busted. It says career women don't make lousy wives because they don't know how to manage time. Anybody wants to take me up on that? Well, you please excuse me for a few minutes because I'm talking from my personal experience. I've been a career woman all my life. I think I never ever stopped working since I left college. And it was a very high pressure job in advertising. As you know, it's ridden with deadlines. Everything was wanted yesterday, day before yesterday. And a delay of a day can mean you lose a client. And to complicate the matter, I was always working for my husband. Husbands don't make very good bosses. They never appreciate you. You're the first one to get the blame. Okay, that is one side of it. The other one is anybody who joins that agency looks at you and says, oh, she's here only because she is who she is married to. She's here only because she's XYZ's wife or the MD's wife or whatever. So there are so many factors that you have to contend. And what that did to me was made me work much, much harder than perhaps I would have worked in an ordinary setup. I had to prove points to my husband. I had to prove points to every newcomer who joined the agency, who came with that skeptical look, and it took him 2 weeks to change his mind, and the whole look, the way he looked at me changed, because then he realized that I wasn't here because I was XYZ's wife. So, you know, it was pressure from all sides, including a high pressure business. And I was at that point of time working in advertising. I was running a spiritual magazine called Mustard Seed. I was writing a regular column for Deccan Herald. 8 o'clock in the morning, 3 days a week, I'd run off to Aarti Nagar to do my Hindustani classical music. I had 2 children who were going to Malya Aditi, and half the time they'd wake up with headache in my finger. I have a headache in my finger, I can't go, and they'd miss the bus. So I had to drive them to Malya Aditi and come back. And and when they came back at 4, and I would dash home at about 5:30, and they'd be standing at the door with a host of complaints for me. This one, he said that to me, and he took my toy, and he beat me up, and she did this, all kinds of things. So that was my life, and more often than not, we were going out in the evenings, or we had a party at home, and I had to cook for 40 people. And I had never even made tea in my mother's house. So I used to have about 5 cookbooks open in the kitchen and be doing this, and this all the time. And this in a completely non-digital age. So if people are talking about multitasking, I'm talking about a scene from my life. That's the way I have lived. And believe me, I have enjoyed every moment of it. And at the same time, I forgot to tell you, I was also partner in a boutique called Panchavati. So that also involved designing saris, and in between I had this fixation about designing rattan furniture. So I even did that, and I really had the time of my life. You know, in all our lives, we have an optimum age that we get a fixation on. So mentally, if I'm thinking of myself, I think of myself as at age 36. And I'm far beyond that, you know, much beyond that, years beyond that. But you know, in my mind, that was my optimum age where I was doing my utmost, and I was spreading myself thin and having the time of my life. It was a fabulous time of my life. So even in all your minds, if you look at yourself and think of when your optimum age was, it would be at a time when you were giving of yourself too much all over the place. So that, according to me, is the way to live, and I have lived fully that way. And if I can do it without cell phones, without laptops, without FaceTime, without apps, without whatever, I'm sure you can do it twice as much as I did. In some years ago, there was an economist called Maslow, and he gave us the basic needs of a human life, what a human being need, apart, like, you know, food and shelter and sex and physical health and etc., etc. One of them is called self-actualization. Now, you self-actualization, let's say the spiritual people will take to mean your urge to merge with the divine. Okay? Whereas the people who are very much of the world, self-actualization to them means finding themselves, finding what keeps their boat sailing, what moves them, what the inner being is all about. And that you can't find if you're content to be part mother, part daughter, part wife, part daughter-in-law, part whatever. If you get mugged among all those 4 or 5 roles, you forget who you are. So it is very imperative, even if it's something simple like, you know, doing embroidery or painting or whatever. Everybody needs that little quotient of self-actualization to be happy. I think, and people who are not happy within themselves cannot make a family happy, cannot make their children happy, cannot make their husbands happy. So it is time that all of us got onto that self-actualization trip in whatever small way you can, or whatever big way you can, whatever. And I'm sure most of you are already doing this. I don't know why I'm harping on this, but I sincerely believe that you cannot be a happy person, you cannot make a family happy unless you make yourself happy first. I want to tell you a small story here. There was this chicken farmer. Am I running out of time? Okay. There was this poultry farmer who used to you know, deal with chickens and eggs and things like that. And one day a little boy brought him an egg and said, look, I found this egg somewhere and you can put it among your eggs. And soon enough that egg hatched. And he was pecking along with all the other chickens, whatever grew out of the egg was pecking along with the other chickens and, you know, chasing worms and things like that. Then one day a naturalist passed by and he said, hey, that's not a chicken, that's a falcon. So farmer said, of course not, it's very much a chicken. Can't you see it's pecking all along with the other chickens, and it's one with all of them, it's just different color. He said, no, I'm sorry, it's a falcon. Let me try. And he took him and tried to toss the falcon up in the air to fly. The falcon came crashing down, flap, 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 came crashing down to the earth. Then again the naturalist said, no, I'm sure this is a falcon, let me take it somewhere else. So he took him to a cliff and released him from the cliff. And suddenly that falcon was soaring. And he realized that he wasn't a chicken. So all of us are like that falcon we are born to be falcons, but we are happy pecking along and being chickens because our minds are not allowing us to come out of the mindset imposed on us by society or by people around us. I'll give you one more instance. Recently, I think Lakshmi just said that I had a play called Merry Go Round produced last year. And somebody liked my book, Playpen, and they said, can we make a play out of it? I said, sure. And he said, who will write the script? I said, I'll write the script because I know the book. So I took about a week and a half and I wrote the script and gave it to them. The play was performed, ran to full houses. Everybody laughed at the right times. Husband came along for the premiere and whatever. He clapped and laughed and he thoroughly enjoyed it. Then at the end of it, he turned around and told me, he said, who wrote the script? I said, I did. He said, what do you know about writing scripts? And I sat back and said, yeah, what do I know about writing scripts? Now, if I had asked that question of myself earlier, I would never have written that script. You know, I mean, you look at the negative inputs that are coming to us all the time. If that question had been asked of me before I wrote the script, I would never have had the confidence to sit and write it. I'd say, what do I know about script writing? But the fact is, I didn't stop to think. I sat back and wrote it. And it turned out quite well, if I may say so. But then, you know, that negative thought luckily came after the whole process rather than before. So we have a lot of negative implants that go into our head. And we believe in those myths and we follow them. The idea is not to believe. The idea is to feel the power within you. We are very powerful people. As women, we're really very powerful people. And we need to realize that we can do just about anything. And there is a little saying in nature. It says, use it or lose it. So the more energy you use, the more energy you will get. If you don't use it, it withers and dies off at some point of time. And then you're back to watching TV serials and saas bahu things and drinking cold tea or whatever and lazing around. Whereas if you're using it, you're self-actualizing yourself and you're building in confidence. You're growing in stature in your own eyes. It's not to impress anybody else except yourself, first of all. Okay, I will close on a very beautiful sher written by Iqbal. Iqbal was an Indian poet who later migrated to Pakistan, and his daughter, he had gone to London for some work, and his daughter wrote to him and said, can you get me a radiogram? You know, those things like that. Said, can you get me a radiogram? So he wrote back a sher to her. He says, Tu Shaheen hai. Shaheen is a falcon. Tu Shaheen hai, parwaz kaam hai tera. Your work is to fly. You're a falcon. Your work is to fly. Your destiny is to fly. Tere aage asman aur bhi hai. Says, you have more and more skies opening up to you. Why do you want to limit yourself to hearing music or, playing tape records and just, limit yourself to just that? And this was written something in, I think, early 90s, early 1900s. So you can imagine the enlightened thought of this poet who's telling his own daughter that, there's so many skies open to you. Why do you want to limit yourself to being a chicken when you can be flying all over the place? Okay, then there is more, some more myths. It says women keep telling themselves, I can't do it. Every time you're faced with a tough task, if you say, I can't do it, sure enough you can't. The idea is not to think, just go ahead and do it. That's why that Nike slogan is so great. It says, just do it. Don't think. It may be good, it may not be so good, it may be indifferent, but the fact is you have done it. And next time maybe you'll do better. So the thing is not to limit yourself to saying, I can't do it. And then the very, very deadly one is, I lose my femininity if I go out in the business world. I want to ask you, has Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw lost her femininity? Or has Indra Nooyi lost her femininity? Or has Naina Kidwai lost her femininity? In a really dog world, they are fighting right there on the front lines, and yet they're beautiful. They're more beautiful now than they possibly were in their youth, and they are fighting shoulder to shoulder with the men and creating new paths and pioneering so many different ventures. So I have all admiration for women who've gone out there and succeeded. And I'm sure each one of you can do it if you don't have your self-limiting thoughts inside. Okay. And then there is the biggest limiting factor is what will people say? Right? Everybody goes through that because their parents have told them that. What will people say? If you wear bikini and go out, what will people say? If you stay out at night, what will people say? The point is people are so busy with their own lives. They have nothing to say. And even if they say, how does it matter? What will they say? First of all, they're so busy doing their own thing, so busy with their own struggles of daily life and daily living. They're really not bothered about you. So the idea is forget people, just do what you want and be the falcon you were meant to be. Thank you so much.